thinking about the Celtics, and what are your thoughts on them going forward this season, Nolan?
So I think this game was definitely a statement game. I think the Celtics are a contender, and I think they will be, and they'll be deep in the playoffs like they were in the bubble. Kemba, Brown, Tatum, all stars. I also like in terms of the Celtics, they had some new signings. Jeff Teague, he's been decent, but in particular Tristan Thompson, and I mean they have the stars already, and Tristan Thompson. I mean, he doesn't have that good of a shot. He's not that good of an offense, but on the boards, there are very few players I watch who just can make that much of an impact. And I think that's going to be just getting extra possessions to the 3 stars of the Celtics is going to be key. And then one guy with the Celtics that I just love watching, regardless, is Marcus Smart. Is just awesome. I love how he plays the game, his defense. I've heard people say mini LeBron. In a lot of ways, I can see the similarity, but I just love watching that guy. So I think the Celtics will be a contender, but this game was definitely a statement game.
Yeah, so I'm totally with you. I'm a big proponent of how good Marcus Smart is. I mean, yeah, they got blown out by the Nets. The third quarter, Kevin Durant just took over. But I think the biggest thing that stood out, if we're just isolating this game, is you brought up the name Kemba Walker. I thought they missed him because when Brown and Tatum were off the floor, Doris Burke said it. The Celtics could not score the basketball, and it was a big problem. And I think they did get better in some ways. Like I think Tristan Thompson, you mentioned, is a big upgrade, and he's going to be helpful for them on the boards and inside. I think Tice is a solid player. They might miss Gordon Hayward, but I think ultimately if Kemba comes back and they have a proficient third scorer, they should be more than fine. My biggest question with the Celtics is they don't really have, like Brad Stevens is a great coach, but they don't have guys who really can make plays for others yet. Marcus Smart's kind of the only guy that can create offense for other people. Jaylen Brown, that's not his best skill. He's a great two-way player, but he can score, he can defend. He's not the kind of guy you have run your offense. Jason Tatum is still developing that aspect of his game. Kemba Walker has never been the kind of point guard that can be a floor general, get everybody involved and make plays and set up everybody else. He's always been more the kind of guy who, it's not that he can't assist the ball, he can assist the ball. It's just that he's a scorer first. He's good in isolation. He uses quickness and that wicked step back and jump shooting, and he can score. And he's kind of a very Walmart version of Kyrie in the sense that he can score a lot of points with great skill and in great hurry. So that would be my only question with the Boston Celtics. But I'm a big believer in both Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, especially Jaylen Brown. I think he's an all-NBA caliber defender. What he did to Pascal Siakam in the bubble was special. It didn't get the type of coverage it deserved. And I think that the Celtics are going to be as good as anybody because they have Brown and Tatum.
So for me, I think Kemba is too underwhelming for what he needs to be able to do. I think we saw in the bubble, and I'm not trying to put too much weight on it, but it was kind of like our first experience with like seeing how Kemba would do. He kind of underwhelmed for them a little bit. He was supposed to be a great scorer, and there was games where he really just didn't show up. And it's not like his defense really makes up for that either, right? He's not the best defender. He's like 5'10", which is
no, he's not a good defender. It's not that Blake's being nice. He's not a good defender.
Yeah, so I think that's very tough. I'm with you on the Tristan Thompson and Teague. Like those were some pretty under the radar signings. Getting rid of Hayward was probably a good thing for them, considering he hasn't played much. He hasn't lived up to the $30 million contract that they gave him. But Kemba is not what he needs to be for the Celtics, and I think that's going to limit them. I think Tatum and Brown might be a year or two away. There was times where they showed really inconsistent stretches, and right, they're really young, so that's going to get ironed out coming with experience and age and whatnot. But for me this year, I really don't think Kemba's good enough to be that third scorer, especially with his defense being underwhelming and bad.
One thing I will say, too, just comparing the Celtics to other contenders is right now, it is pretty early, and we haven't seen Kemba come back. We did see him in the bubble. I would take the new look Nets, the Bucks, and the Heat all over the Celtics going to the playoffs. That's just how I'd rank them. So that's just one thing I wanted to put out there, and what I've noticed.
Without Kemba or with Kemba, too?
Yeah, with Kemba. So I'm going off Kemba performing in the bubble. So I'm in agreement with Blake that he was pretty underwhelming, and I think I'm curious how he comes out because I think he does have a lot more to prove. But as of right now, even just considering everything, those are my rankings of like the contenders for the East.
Oh, so I'm not a believer in Kemba Walker at all. I don't think you can win a big playoff series with Kemba Walker, and it's because he's a 6'1" shoot first point guard or 6 feet shoot first point guard just a liability on the defensive end.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he'll always hamper you, and he'll always struggle in the playoffs when the game gets more physical and slower, and he's forced to drive in the half court, because if you force him to drive, he gets swallowed up by other teams' size. The Raptors really bothered him with Marc Gasol, Pascal Siakam, Serge Ibaka. The Heat did more of the same with Bam Adebayo and Myers Leonard when he played and Kelly Olynyk when he played. So I think that is the problem. But I think that the reason I would still put the Celtics above both, I don't know if I would actually probably have to be with you, even though I'm a Tatum Brown believer. I don't know if I could say they're a better team, even though I think they'll make it further in the playoffs, if that makes sense.
And so Jamal asked a really good question here. I want to hear your guys' thoughts. Should the Celtics keep Kemba long term, or do you think they'll maybe get rid of him in like the next year or two and do what they've been doing? And they've recycled point guards, right? They had IT for his awesome season. Then they tried the Kyrie experiment. That didn't really work out. Now they're on to Kemba. What do you guys think?
So what I would say is it's going to come down to this year. He didn't really perform in the bubble. He's still got a lot of the same team with maybe some better acquisitions to make it even a better team. He's injured right now. It'll come down to how he performs this year. I think it's a make or break year for the Kemba Walker career. So I think it's all going to come down to this year, in my opinion.
I say trade him. I never understood the signing to begin with. Moved off Kyrie Irving and replaced Kyrie Irving with a better personality, worse Kyrie Irving with a contract when you had two guys in Tatum and Brown who were legit and were getting hampered by Kyrie Irving taking shots. I think Gordon Hayward was actually better at running their offense than Kemba Walker in terms of getting other people involved. Now he's gone. I think Marcus Smart is actually a little better at it too than Kemba Walker, though Kemba Walker's a really good player, really good scorer. I think they'd be better off with a defensive-minded guard who can come up the floor, do his job, and hit shots when they need him to. They got to play through Brown and Tatum. Kemba Walker is just not a fit to be he's not what they require for their team.
Yeah, so I'm with both of you on that. And we've seen Danny Ainge is willing to trade pieces, right? He's traded IT. He's traded Kyrie. He broke up the big four when they were all getting older, right? He shipped him off to the Nets. He wasn't one of those guys where the Lakers did a farewell tour with Kobe. I mean, you can't really compare them, but like they won a championship. He's willing to ship assets. He views it more as like business moves instead of like, I don't know, a team like the Kings that if they get like a star player, someone who's big for them, like they're going to hold on for dear life, right? I think they should trade him. What we've said, like being a defensive liability in the playoffs in a 7-game series format, teams are going to go at you, right? And if you want that man guarding Kyrie for a 7-game series, good luck. I mean, that's all I got to say. Good luck with that. It's not going to get good results. And I'm with you on the Tatum and Brown thing. They're definitely developing stars and going to have around time. If they get rid of Kemba, do you guys think they should go with Smart and then maybe some backup point guard who could fill in and then upgrade at center or maybe a power forward or bring in another wing?
No, I don't think it's sustainable to have Marcus Smart be your starting point guard. I do think he can play point guard at times for you because he's a very good playmaker. I think Marcus Smart has to be on this team. I think he's as important as anybody. Like Marcus Smart is an incredible basketball player, and I'm with Nolan. I love Marcus Smart. I think you got to find – I don't know. Like, if we're going to go for a bad defensive score first point guard, I would rather take Goran Dragic than I would Kemba Walker, especially because I think Goran Dragic is less volume. I think he's a little better defender, and I think he's a crafty enough scorer but can do it in less shots where he fits better as a number 3 option next to Tatum and Brown rather than Kemba.
Yeah, so I actually have a thought on this too. I think that that I agree with what Vish was saying in terms of bringing in an offensive first point guard. I also very much agree with Gershon, I think, had the comment that CP3 would be a dream point guard. I don't think that's possible. However, one guy who I'm thinking of right now that maybe there's some potential is Kyle Lowry. And I think that the Raptors are getting a little bit worse. They kind of got exposed in the playoffs, especially if OG doesn't make that corner three.
They're old. They're old.
Yeah, I don't know how old Kyle is, but I know he's
like over 30.
Yeah, he's consistently underrated. I think most people in the league will admit that. He plays pretty good defense, very smart player, and I think he would fit the Celtics team so well. So if I'm the Celtics, I'm thinking if I'm going to ship off Kemba, that is one player I think who could fit the role very well.
He's kind of a CP3 approximation, to be honest. Similarly great defender, fantastic floor general. I think maybe he isn't as dirty as CP3. He doesn't get as many fights with teammates, maybe a little easier to get along with. And he's an outstanding passer. He's really good at running sets. If they can get 1 or 2 years out of Kyle Lowry, that's brilliant. That would be fantastic for the Boston Celtics.
And they're a team who's been in the trade talks for Harden. Whether they go that route or not would be interesting to see.